Hi, welcome to a new video. Today I'm here to do a wrap up of all of the books I read during winter this year. Let's get right into it. Here's the pile of books I read, apart from the first one, and obviously there's my Kindle on top. The first one I didn't really finish, and if you've seen my vlogs, you would have seen why. But I did read the other 6 physical books. I did also read around 10 Kindle books as well. Actually, Kindle/audio books as well. Let's start. I have opened my story graph on my computer in front of me because not only do I have my ratings and all the books I read, I also have the stats so I can go through genres. And I thought I would start with romance because there's not many books that fit that category. Actually, I only read 2 contemporary romances this season, and that first one, which was actually my first book of the year, was Talk Bookish to Me by Kate Bromley. This is about, let's look it up, Kate Sullivan is definitely not avoiding her deadline. After all, it's the week of her best friend's wedding and she's the maid of honor, so she got lots of responsibilities. But then, who should show up at the rehearsal dinner but Kara's college ex-boyfriend Ryan? Turns out he's one of the groom's childhood friends, and he's in the wedding party too, considering neither Kara nor Ryan were prepared to see each other ever again. It's decidedly not a meet cute. However, when Kara sits down to write again the next day, her writer's block is suddenly gone. Are muses real? And is Kara's muse Ryan? And yeah, that's the end of the synopsis. It was a nice book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I liked it. I thought it had all of the elements that a romance book needs to have, including stuff about their lives. It's not all about the two of them, like mental health problems, family struggles. It had other elements apart from the basic elements you need in a romance story, which is why, and I enjoyed it, which is why I gave it 3.5 stars. But it wasn't very memorable. Like, I don't remember the majority of it. Ryan doesn't really have a place to stay, so he ends up staying at her house for a bit, but he has a few things he has to figure out in his life, and Kara actually booked a 6-month holiday, kind of sabbatical, to Italy. So she also has that going, which creates a bit of tension here and there, but that's all I remember really. But yes, moving on to the second romance, I read Temporary Roomie by Sarah Adams. This is a Kindle Unlimited book that I read this month. I give it 3 stars, and I'm going to read the synopsis before giving my thoughts. What happens when you have to play nice with your greatest enemy? Revenge. Drew Marshall may have let me move into his spare bedroom while my house is being renovated, but don't think for 1 second his kindness comes without strings. Big, ugly, fake relationship strings. That's okay though, Dr. Drew. I'll agree to your terms, move into your house and act like your girlfriend when the big day comes. But I also plan to make your life miserable. Make you pay for what you did to me. I may not be good at forgiving or forgetting, but I'm excellent at getting even. I was afraid midway through that this relationship wasn't going to be very healthy, because when they say I'm going to make your life miserable, it means exactly that. It's not a safe space. Their house, the common areas are not safe spaces. This is a battle. It started as pranks and then it moves into ruining each other's lives. I mean, I did enjoy it. The main character is actually pregnant and her house is being renovated because there's a big leak situation, and then they discover there were other underlying issues with the house, so she really desperately needs a place to stay. And because she's pregnant and she's a owner of a business, she can't just stay in her best friend's house with her young kid that is waking up at different hours throughout the night. She definitely needs her rest and her space. And so she moves into with her best friend's brother, which they've hated each other since before they met. But it's really not that good. It's more like it was entertaining. I had a good time, basically couldn't go to sleep, and so I read the whole book. And I will never reread it. But it was decent. It was a decent book. Let's move into fantasy. Starting with the physical books. After I read that first romance, I went back to reading The Luminaries by Susan Dennard, which I really liked. I really enjoyed. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I think it's definitely above 4 stars, but maybe I'll bump it down to 4.25. I think I was very, very generous in the beginning of the year with my ratings, and now that I'm 3 months in, I think I need to kind of have a second look at my ratings to make sure they're still kind of aligned to what I normally do, which is 3 stars, it's a good book, 4 stars, it's a very good book, 5 stars is obviously I loved it, best book ever, goes in my favorites. This one is above a very good book, but below my favorites, which is why I initially gave it 4.5 stars. Let me read the synopsis. Hemlock Falls isn't like other towns. You won't find it in a map. Your phone won't work here, and the forest outside town might just kill you. Winnie Wednesday wants nothing more than to join the Luminaries, ancient order that protects Winnie's town and the rest of humanity from the monsters and nightmares that rise in the forest of Hemlock Falls every night. Ever since her father was exposed as a witch and a traitor, Winnie and her family have been shunned. But on her 16th birthday, she can take the deadly luminary hunter trials and prove herself true and loyal and restore her family's good name, or die trying. But in order to survive, Winnie must enlist the help of the one person who can train her, resident bad boy and Winnie's ex-best friend. While Jay might be the most promising new hunter in Hemlock Falls, he also seems to know more about the nightmares of the forest than he should. Together, he and Winnie will discover a danger lurking in the forest no one in Hemlock Falls is prepared for. Not all monsters can be slain, and not all nightmares are confined to the dark. I really enjoyed this book. I actually found the world quite interesting and different and creative. I really enjoyed the characters and the little hints of romance that were coming through. The plot is interesting, and I think it was a good start to the series. But let me just advise you to be prepared. Nothing really is going to be resolved by the end of this book. Like, none of the mysteries are going to be solved. There will be no romance happening, really. I think this book needed to be maybe 50 pages more to have a slightly bit more of a resolution. It got me really intrigued, and I will 100% immediately pick up the second one. Like, I really enjoyed it. I didn't even mention the atmosphere. It was divine. In the same vlog, I also read Mysteries of Thorn Manor by Margaret Rogerson, which is a novella companion to Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, which I actually reread right after reading this because it made me want to revisit it. I don't have much to say about this apart from it's a good companion novel, checks in with everyone you want to check in. It adds a little bit to the story, and it's just nice, heartwarming, and just a great visit to the world and these characters. So I really enjoyed it. What's important is actually to talk about Sorcery of Thorns, which is one of my favorite books. And I was so happy to revisit it and prove again, make sure that it was actually one of my favorites, which I managed to do. and I'm very happy about that. I initially, I think, gave it maybe 4 stars, but then while rereading it, I bumped it up to 4.75, I think, which is an almost 5-star read. I don't think it's perfect, which is why it doesn't have 5 stars, but I think it's almost perfect. It's just a few details here and there that made it not be 5 stars, but nothing major and not one specific thing for me to really point out. So let's read this synopsis. All sorcerers are evil. Elizabeth has known that as long as she has known anything. Raised as a foundling in one of Ostermere's great libraries, Elizabeth has grown up among the tools of sorcery, magical grimoires that whisper on shelves and rattle against iron chains. If provoked, they transform into grotesque monsters of ink and leather. Then an act of sabotage releases the library's most dangerous grimoire, and Elizabeth is implicated in the crime. With no one to turn to but her sworn enemy, the sorcerer Nathaniel Thorn, and his mysterious demonic servant, she finds herself entangled in a centuries-old conspiracy. Not only could the great libraries go up in flames, but the world along with them. As her alliance with Nathaniel goes stronger, Elizabeth starts to question everything she's been taught about sorcerers, about the libraries she loves, even about herself. For Elizabeth has a power she has never guessed, and a future she could never have imagined. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic synopsis for this book. I don't think Nathaniel and Elizabeth have ever been like sworn enemies. There's just a bit of annoyance between them, but the book is really good. I would actually kind of class it as cozy fantasy. I know it can't really be classed as cozy fantasy because the stakes are really high, but apart from that, like the group of characters involved and the scale of the book is actually quite small, even though they're saving this world, or they're trying to at least. It does feel like it's set in a small town almost, or a small city at least. I really enjoy it because of that. It just feels, it has a cozy atmosphere, as well as just the sprinkle of magic everywhere. I mean, I love that. After that, I read The Stolen Heir by Holly Black, one of my highly anticipated releases of this year. I love the Cruel Prince series, and I also really enjoyed the other books set in this world, which is The Darkest Part of the Forest. That was really good. I haven't read Tide and all of the books in that story, but The Stolen Heir, let's read the synopsis. A runaway queen, a reluctant prince, and a quest that may destroy them both. 8 years have passed since the Battle of the Serpent, but in the icy north, Lady Nor and the Court of Teeth has reclaimed the Ice Needle Citadel. There, she's using an ancient relic to create monsters of stick and snow, who will do her bidding and exact her revenge. Surin, child queen of the Court of Teeth, and the one person with power over her mother, fled to the human world, where she lives feral in the woods. Lonely and still haunted by the merciless torments she endured in the Court of Teeth, she bides her time by releasing mortals from foolish bargains. She believes herself forgotten, until the storm hag Bogdana chases her through the night streets. Surin is saved by none other than Prince Oak, the heir to Elfheim. She was once promised to in marriage, and whom she has resented for years. Oak, now 17, is charming, beautiful, and manipulative. He's on a mission that will lead him to the Citadel, and she wants Surin's help, but if she agrees, it will mean guarding her heart against the boy she once knew and a prince she cannot trust, as well as confronting all the horrors she thought she'd left behind. So I mean, actually, Victoria Aveyard says it very well. Holly Black is the fairy queen. It's exactly that. She is good. I love her fairy stories. They're dark and romantic and whimsical. The world is just amazing, but also perilous. She does the perfect fairies from folklore. It's just amazing. This is a quest style story, which I enjoy. It had a relatively good plot twist, which I did predict slightly earlier on. If it was earlier, I would have been annoyed. Because it was around 50 pages before, I'm okay with that. We follow Ren, or Suren. We met her especially in the last book of the Cruel Prince trilogy, as well as Oak, which we've known throughout the whole thing. It was so nice to go back to this world and be with characters that we've known, but they're now grown up, and so you don't know what has happened in between, and you're learning that. You're kind of re-meeting the characters. I had the best time reading this book. Very good new story in this world that I'm really excited to continue on to the next book. I really want to know what's going to be happening, and yeah, I had the best time. So even if it's not the perfect book, the reading experience was really good, and I think that's a lot of the times what makes or breaks a book either way. So I am happy with this. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. I would have given it 4 stars if the reading experience hadn't been as good as it was. But because it was amazing, I gave it 4.5, and I think it deserves it. Violet Maid of Thorns by Gina Chen. That was a book I read on Audible in January, which I gave 4.25 stars. Let's read the synopsis. A darkly enchanting fantasy debut about a morally grey witch, a cursed prince, and a prophecy that ignites their fate-twisted destinies. Apparently perfect for fans of The Cruel Prince, which is myself. Violet is a prophet and a liar, influencing the royal court with her cleverly phrased and not always true divinations. Honesty is for suckers, like the oh-so-not charming Prince Cyrus, who plans to strip Violet of her official role when he's crowned at the end of the summer, unless Violet does something about it. But when the king asks her to falsely prophesize Cyrus' love story for an upcoming ball, Violet awakens a dreaded curse, one that will end in either damnation or salvation for the kingdom. Violet must untangle a wicked web of deceit in order to save herself and the kingdom, or doom them all. Opinions about the synopsis. I mean, it kind of does say what the book is about, but also, again, it's a bit too dramatic for what the book is actually about. This is a romance fantasy book. It's definitely about politics, and Violet has to look out for herself in this court. She is a woman, diviner, which means people don't necessarily trust her that much, because sometimes she says things that people don't want to hear, and so she learned from a young age that she actually sometimes has to twist the truth a bit or say it in a way that makes it more attractive for everyone to hear. And it's the reason why Prince Cyrus doesn't really like her or trust her, because he thinks she just gave in to court politics, which she hasn't. She just has to look out for herself as a young woman. She uses it to defend herself, which is valid. I mean, it is mostly focused on the romance, while The Cruel Prince, the romance is a kind of little added bonus in there. I did enjoy this book. I liked the characters. I understood why a book like this would have been written in today's world, even though it's set in a high fantasy setting. And I did enjoy it. I mean, it's not an amazing book. It's a young adult book, which means it falls into tropes sometimes / a lot of the time. Even though it does fall into tropes, I did really enjoy it. I thought it was a good book, and I gave it 4 stars. Next up, we have 3 books that I read in one vlog, and actually like in the space of 3 days maximum. Let's start with the first one, which was Garlic and the Vampire by Bree Paulsen. The cutest graphic novel I've ever read. It's not the top one. Let's read the synopsis. Garlic feels as though she's always doing the wrong thing, no matter how much her friend Carrot and kindly witch Agnes encourage her. Garlic just wants to tend to her own garden, where it's nice and safe. But when the village of vegetable people learns that a bloodthirsty vampire may have moved into the nearby castle, they all agree that despite her fear and self-doubt, Garlic is the obvious choice to confront him. And with everyone counting on her, Garlic reluctantly agrees to face the mysterious vampire. With humor, heart, and an unusual heroine, with more courage than she realizes. Bree Paulsen's debut graphic novel is a farm-fresh tale that reminds readers to believe in themselves and that strangers are not always as scary as they might seem. And I'll read you the kind of dedication at the start of the book. It says, "For all the anxious bulbs." I mean, isn't that the cutest? But yeah, basically it's about a anxious little garlic that has to go on a little adventure and face her fears. I know I'm saying little very much. I'm not belittling her adventure or her fears. It's just that she's tiny, you know. It's very cute. It made me cry because I would love to be as courageous as this little garlic friend over here. But yes, okay, that's all I have to say. I gave it 4.5 stars on this one because I did think it moved too quickly in the end. Like, she goes in, she's very afraid of the vampire, and the next page she's best friend with him. So I just thought it deserved a bit more time in the end to explore the story a bit more. But the one I read afterwards is the sequel, which is Garlic and the Witch, and this one is 5 out of 5 stars. It's amazing. I loved it. Garlic continues her story by going on another adventure farther away from home with her now friend Vampire. And let me read you the dedication because it's even better than the first one. To all the sprouts facing big changes and uncertainty. And obviously, again, it follows our anxious little bulb going on an adventure. I mean, what more could a person want? 5 out of 5 stars. It's amazing. But after that, I read, also for the same vlog, A Psalm for the Wilde built by Becky Chambers. Let's read the synopsis. It's been centuries since the robots of Panga gained self-awareness and laid down their tools. Centuries since they wandered en masse into the wilderness, never to be seen again. Centuries since they faded into myth and urban legend. One day, the life of a tea monk is upended by the arrival of a robot, there to honor the old promise of checking in. The robot has one question: what do people need? But the answer to that question depends on who you ask and how. They're going to need to ask it a lot. I actually don't think this synopsis really describes the book. Basically, this book follows a tea monk that is, as many of us, unsure about their life. They don't know what they're doing with their life, really. They decide to change careers, move out of the city, and become a tea monk. Actually, they weren't a tea monk before. But even as a tea monk, they're not fully satisfied and they just don't know what's missing. So they decide to go on an adventure into nature, into the wilderness. And there they meet the robot, which has come, as the synopsis says, to check in with humans and make sure they have what they need and kind of ask them what exactly do they need. And then they kind of go on a little adventure together because the tea monk was going on an adventure and the robot kind of joins them. I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's one of my new favorites. I loved all of the talk about being human and all of the struggles we face internally and externally, and being accepted and wanting to figure out what you want to do with your life, and society and politics, and, you know, just being human. And nature, that's a big part. Nature and city life and being more sustainable, and the future and our past. It's just about a whole bunch of things that are very relevant to our life in the moment, but also just following these two amazing characters that you will love instantly. Now, moving on, I read The Last Hours Trilogy by Cassandra Clare. I'm going to talk about them as a whole. As a whole, this is at least a 4.5 star trilogy. It's really, really good. The characters are amazing. The whole setup of it being historical, set after the most popular trilogy by Cassandra Clare, following the kids of those characters, is just a really, really good setup. And the story itself, it's quite interesting, is one of her best ones yet. And the way she set it up, it's as if it's a series. Every chapter is an episode, but within an episode, you have scenes going from one person to another, to another, to another. And so within a chapter, you have the same thing. After each scene, there's a tiny cliffhanger. And then at the end of each chapter / episode, you have a slightly bigger cliffhanger. So that just kept you turning the pages throughout all of these big books. Because the smallest, which is the first one, is at least, it's 500 and something pages. The second one is already 700, and the last one is 850, I think. So you really need to be able to have something to want you to keep turning the pages, and I think she did a great job at that. My favorite book is actually the second one, which includes a forced marriage trope, which is really well done. It was amazing. And I think my least favorite was actually probably the last book, even though I did really enjoy it, but I think the end wasn't perfect. In general, a very solid trilogy. One of my favorite series, I have to say. So until now, I had a very solid start to this year. The only two books that weren't great until this point were my two romances. But yes, let's move on from that. Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries, Heather Fawcett. I gave this book 4.25 stars. It was a really good book. I really, really liked it. Let's go with that. But yes, let's read the synopsis. Emily Wilde is good at many things. She is the foremost expert on the study of fairies. She is a genius scholar and a meticulous researcher who is writing the world's first encyclopedia of fairy lore. But Emily Wilde is not good at people. So when she arrives in the hardscrabble village of Rafsnik, I'm not going to try and pronounce that. It's really, there's no way I know how to pronounce this. Emily has no intention of befriending the gruff townsfolk, nor does she care to spend time with another new arrival, her dashing and insufferably handsome academic rival, Wendell Bumblebee. But as Emily gets closer to uncovering the secrets of the Hidden Ones, the most elusive of all fairies, she also finds herself on the trail of another mystery. Who is Wendell Bumblebee, and what does he really want? To find the answer, she'll have to unlock the greatest mystery of all, her own heart. Oh my god, that's a very good synopsis. I didn't really read it before reading the book. Just to put it out there, handsome academic rival Wendell Bumblebee is not really her rival. They are friends. I mean, she doesn't really agree with some of the ways that Wendell kind of deals with the academic world and how he does his research and writes his papers. but they are friends. He's probably her only friend. And that's kind of sorted in the first 20% of the book, so I don't think I'm giving many spoilers. The main character kind of feels this way about him at the start, but it's one of those ridiculous things that people kind of think that are true, but actually the person reading the book immediately knows it's not really the truth. But yes, I really enjoyed this book. It turned a bit darker in the end than I was expecting, but it was still very heartwarming, and it is sold as a cozy fantasy, which I agree, because it's very atmospheric. Relatively low stakes in terms of no one's saving the world over here, but it does have life or death moments. And yeah, I think it's a really good cozy fantasy. I really enjoyed it. It definitely wasn't my favorite book ever, but it was really, really good. I would highly recommend it for anyone looking for cozy fantasy recommendations. But this one is specifically set in winter, around Christmas time. Moving on to this month. This month has been chaotic. I started a whole bunch of books which I didn't finish. I'm going to start by listing the ones I didn't finish. Crown of Petals and Ice by Shannon and Kelly St. Clair. The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. And Godkiller by Hannah Kenner. I started these 3 books in the beginning of the month, right after I finished the Last Hours trilogy, and I just didn't want to continue on any of these. So I did go into detail on my recent weekly vlog, is the name in the thumbnail, which is why I'm not going to go into details now, but I didn't finish any of these, but I'm not going to DNF any of them. Actually, I want to go back to it probably later on in the year when I'm into darker fantasy again, but I'm just not in the mood to read these right now, which is why I'm putting them to the side, but not giving up on them. But I did finish some other books, including Prince and the Dressmaker by Wang. This is a graphic novel. Let me read the synopsis. Prince Sebastian is looking for a bride, or rather, his parents are looking for one for him. Sebastian is too busy hiding his secret life from everyone. At night, he puts on daring dresses and takes Paris by storm as the fabulous Lady Crystalia, the hottest fashion icon in the world, capital of fashion. Sebastian's secret weapon is his brilliant dressmaker Francis, his best friend and one of the only 2 people who know the truth. Sometimes this boy wears dresses, but Francis dreams of greatness, and being someone's secret weapon means being a secret. Forever. How long can Frances defeat her dreams to protect her friend? Wang weaves an exuberantly romantic tale of identity, young love, art, and family. A fairy tale for any age. The Prince and the Dressmaker will steal your heart. So this is a historical queer romance. It was a very good graphic novel. It's not an amazing story like I would say The Garlic and the Witch is. I think The Garlic and the Witch was a very good story in like 200 pages. While this one is a good story in 300 pages. It's still not the most intricate, interesting story you've ever read. It's just a very nice, heartwarming story about a queer romance and friendship in a historical setting with amazingly beautiful illustrations and super lovable characters. So I would definitely recommend this one, and I think I gave it 4 stars. Battery died, so I'm coming back to finish the video. I was talking about The Prince and the Dressmaker, which I really enjoyed, even though it wasn't my favorite ever graphic novel, but I was just moving on to the last book that I'm going to be mentioning in this video. I have read 2 more, but they were already in spring because we're kind of a week into spring, I think. But getting into the last book of this video, and that was The Lord of Steriel by A.J. Lancaster. I read it on audio and I gave it 3.5 stars. I enjoyed this book, but I didn't really like it, and so I gave it 3.5. I think it's a solid, cozy fantasy book. Actually, let's read the synopsis. The Lord of Steriel is dead. Long live the Lord of Steriel, whoever that is. Everyone knows who the magical estate will choose for its next ruler. Or do they? Will it be the Lord's eldest son, who he despised? His favourite nephew with the strongest magical lens sense? His scandalous daughter who ran away from home years ago to study illusion? Hetta knows it won't be her, and she's glad of it. Returning home for her father's funeral, all Hetta has to do is survive the family drama and avoid entanglements with irritatingly attractive local men until the choosing. Then she can leave. But whoever Sariel chooses will have bigger problems than eccentric relatives to deal with. Winged beautifully, deadly problems. For the first time in centuries, the Fae are returning to the mortal realm, and only the Lord of Sariel can keep the estate safe, in theory. And the Lord of Sariel is the first book in the Sariel Quartet. I have actually started the second book already and am quite enjoying. But yes, so this is a cozy fantasy 100%. It's kind of a historical fiction. So in this world there's magic, there's not that much magic, and Fae have been separated from humans for a while. But this law in the Faelands has just been abolished, and so they can start coming through. And obviously her dad just died, so she went to the funeral, but things ensue. Not only a mystery to do with the inheritance of the land, but also relationships with old friends and acquaintances. But it's all kind of slow paced and not very high stakes. So it definitely has the kind of almost cottagecore feels with, they live in a big manor, obviously. They're the lord of this estate. So the family of the lords of this estate. And so they live in the big manor house. But it's very entertaining, and it's a very good audiobook to just, do tasks around the house or work while listening to it. You can definitely keep track relatively easily. Yeah, it's been an entertaining read, and I'm enjoying the second one as well, and hoping to continue and finish this quartet during spring. I'm very excited about the books I'm going to be reading and that I have read already. As I've mentioned in the spring TBR, I'm hoping to get more into cozy fantasy. In the first 3 months of this year, I read 16 books. And I'm quite happy with the results. Only 4 were below a 4-star, which is really good. And I'm hoping to keep reading amazing books throughout spring and the rest of the year. I do hope you enjoy this video. Leave down below which books were your favorite ones from this first part of the year. Hopefully I'll see you here in the next one. Bye!